Right now, one ship is launching combat aircraft over Iran. The same ship that intercepted missiles over the Red Sea seized an oil tanker off Venezuela and has been continuously deployed for 9 months straight. She carries 75 aircraft, 2 nuclear reactors that won't need refueling for 25 years, and 23 technologies never before installed on any warship in history. She cost $13 billion and nearly bankrupted the entire program before she ever left port. This is the USS Gerald R. Ford, the most advanced warship ever built, and today we are going inside her. Before we dive in, please subscribe. It costs you nothing but means everything to us. Let's start with some context, because the Ford doesn't make sense without understanding what came before her. For 5 decades, the backbone of American naval power was the Nimitz class. 10 carriers, all built at Newport News, Virginia, the only shipyard in America capable of constructing nuclear supercarriers. These ships were engineering marvels, but here's the thing. The Nimitz class was designed in the 1960s. Cold War era thinking, Cold War era technology. By the time the Navy began planning the next generation, the world had changed completely. Peer adversaries were developing ballistic anti-ship missiles capable of targeting carriers from thousands of miles away. Stealth aircraft were becoming standard. Unmanned systems were moving from science fiction into operational reality. The Navy didn't need an upgrade. They needed a revolution. That revolution is CVN-78, the USS Gerald R. Ford. Named after the 38th president, a man who actually served in combat aboard a carrier in the Pacific during World War II, the Ford was commissioned on July 22, 2017. As of early 2026, she holds the title of the world's largest warship ever constructed. She stretches 1,106 feet from bow to stern. Her flight deck spans 256 feet across, covering more than 4.5 acres. She displaces 100,000 tons fully loaded. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the weight of 800 fully loaded Boeing 747s stacked on a scale. But raw size is the least interesting thing about her. What truly separates the Ford from every carrier that came before is what's packed inside. Let's talk about the single most important piece of technology on this ship. For 60 years, carriers launched jets using steam catapults, massive pistons driven by high-pressure steam that hurl a 60,000-pound aircraft from 0 to 170 miles per hour in 2 seconds flat. They work. The Nimitz class has launched hundreds of thousands of aircraft this way, but steam catapults are brutal. They deliver their energy in one violent, uncontrolled spike. Every single launch hammers the airframe. They require hundreds of man-hours per week to maintain, with hundreds of moving parts constantly operating under extreme pressure, and they can't adjust. Whether you're launching a 45,000-pound FA-18 Super Hornet or a 5,000-pound drone, the catapult delivers roughly the same brute force. There is no fine control. The Ford replaces all of that with EMALS, the Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System. Instead of steam and pistons, EMALS uses linear induction motors, massive electromagnetic rails that accelerate aircraft using electricity stored in giant flywheels spinning at tremendous speeds, then released as electromagnetic energy along the catapult track. The result is a launch that is smoother, more precise, and completely adjustable. Launching a heavy F-35C at full combat load, full power. Launching a lightweight MQ-25 drone, dial it back. The system adjusts automatically for every single aircraft, reducing stress on airframes by up to 30%. Jets last longer, need fewer repairs, and can fly more missions per deployment. The Ford can generate 25% more aircraft launches per day than a Nimitz-class carrier. On a ship projecting combat power across a war zone, that extra capacity can change the outcome of an entire campaign. The landing side got the same treatment. The advanced arresting gear replaces old hydraulic cable systems with an electromagnetically controlled recovery system. Where the old setup applied a violent fixed braking force, the new system modulates its resistance smoothly and precisely. It can safely catch a heavyweight strike fighter coming back with a full weapons load and a lightweight unmanned aircraft on back-to-back landings with zero manual reconfiguration. That flexibility becomes critical as the Navy moves deeper into unmanned operations. Now look at the Ford's Island. That tower sitting on the flight deck, compare it to a Nimitz-class carrier, and two things immediately stand out. It's smaller, and it sits further back toward the stern. Moving it aft opened up more room for flight deck operations, but inside that more compact structure lives something that gives the Ford a completely unfair advantage over anything else at sea: the dual-band radar system. Nimitz-class carriers rely on Cold War-era rotating antennas that mechanically sweep the sky. They work, but they have blind spots. They can be jammed, and they struggle against modern threats like sea-skimming cruise missiles and stealth aircraft. The Ford combines two entirely different radar types into one integrated package. The AN/SPY 3 multifunction radar operates in X-band, high frequency and extremely precise, handling missile guidance, surface tracking, and close-range threats. The AN/SPY 4 volume search radar operates in S-band, lower frequency, much longer range, covering wide area surveillance, ballistic missile detection, and air traffic control. Together, they create a 360-degree picture of every air, surface, and ballistic threat around the ship simultaneously. And because both use active electronically scanned arrays, they don't rotate. They steer their beams electronically at speeds no mechanical antenna could ever match. A Nimitz-class carrier depends heavily on its escort destroyers and cruisers for radar coverage. The Ford can detect threats her own escorts miss entirely. Quick question for you. Do you think the dual-band radar, or EMALS, is the bigger technological leap for modern carrier warfare? Drop your answer in the comments below. All of this technology needs electricity, enormous amounts of it. 2 Bechtel A1B nuclear reactors power the Ford, generating roughly 600 megawatts of electrical output, which is 3 times the power of a Nimitz-class carrier. But here's the part most people overlook. The Ford currently uses only about 40% of that capacity. The remaining 60% is reserved headroom deliberately built in for weapon systems that don't fully exist yet. Directed energy weapons, electromagnetic railguns, advanced electronic warfare platforms, all of them consume power on a scale that would cripple any previous carrier. The Ford was designed to absorb all of that without straining. She's running at half effort right now, and she can operate for 25 years before needing a single drop of reactor fuel. Here's something that sounds unglamorous, but matters enormously in actual combat: the weapons elevators. The Nimitz class used cable-driven elevators to haul bombs and missiles up from the magazines to the flight deck. They were slow and broke down constantly. The Ford uses 11 electromagnetic elevators that move munitions 3 times faster and with far greater reliability. When aircraft are burning through weapons at high tempo during sustained operations, those extra minutes between rearming cycles add up fast. The Ford carries approximately 4,500 personnel, including the air wing, around 600 fewer than a Nimitz-class carrier. That reduction was engineered deliberately through automation, reduced maintenance requirements from EMALS and AAG, and advanced damage control systems. Over a 50-year service life, that 600-person difference saves the Navy roughly $4 billion in personnel costs alone, and the sailors who do serve aboard her live better than any carrier crew in history. The kitchen serves 17,000 meals a day. The medical bay has a full surgical suite. USB and AC power is available at every single berthing area. On a Nimitz-class ship, sailors fought over power outlets. On the Ford, that's simply a given. Small detail, enormous difference when you're 9 months from home. Now let's talk aircraft, because a carrier is ultimately only as powerful as what it can put in the sky. The Ford's air wing can embark over 75 aircraft. The backbone is 4 squadrons of F/A-18E and F Super Hornets, roughly 44 jets handling air-to-air combat, precision ground strikes, and anti-ship missions. Alongside them, the F-35C Lightning II, the Navy's first supersonic stealth carrier fighter with internal weapons bays and 5th-generation sensor fusion. The Ford's launch and recovery systems were literally engineered around the F-35C's requirements from day one. EA-18G Growlers provide electronic warfare, jamming enemy radar, and protecting strike packages. E-2D Advanced Hawkeyes, flying radar stations that push the carrier's sensor reach out by hundreds of miles. MH-60R Seahawks cover anti-submarine warfare and search and rescue. And then there is the aircraft quietly changing the entire strategic equation. The MQ-25A Stingray, the Navy's first carrier-based unmanned aerial refueling drone. Super Hornets currently burn a significant portion of their fuel just flying to and from the ship. The MQ-25 acts as an airborne tanker, extending the range of every manned aircraft in the air wing by hundreds of miles. That means the Ford can operate further from shore, sitting safely beyond the reach of Chinese anti-ship ballistic missiles, while still putting strike aircraft over targets deep inland. That single capability is worth more to the Ford's combat reach than adding a dozen extra fighter jets to the deck. Let's bring this out of the spec sheet and into reality, because the Ford has now been tested in actual combat. Her first full deployment launched in May 2023. She crossed the Atlantic, conducted exercises in the Arctic with the Royal Norwegian Navy, then moved into the Mediterranean. When Hamas attacked Israel on October 7, 2023, the Ford Carrier Strike Group was immediately redirected to the eastern Mediterranean as a direct signal of American resolve. Her escort destroyers moved into the Red Sea and repeatedly intercepted missiles and drones launched from Yemen. That single deployment covered 83,476 nautical miles and logged over 10,396 sorties before she returned to Norfolk in January 2024. By June 2025, she was back at sea. She exercised with NATO allies in the North and Norwegian seas, conducting joint operations with Norwegian, German, and French warships inside the Arctic Circle. In October, she redeployed to the Caribbean, arriving in November as part of the largest American military buildup in that region in 30 years. In December, she was reported as directly involved in the seizure of a foreign oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. Then, in February 2026, she transited toward the Persian Gulf. On February 28th, coordinated U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran began. The Ford was there, launching aircraft as part of Operation Epic Fury. By that point, she had been continuously deployed for 9 months, one of the longest carrier deployments in recent memory. Now let's be honest, because we don't sugarcoat things. The Ford program was a mess for years behind schedule and billions over budget. The original estimate was $10 to $12 billion. Final construction costs hit $13.3 billion, plus $4.7 billion in research and development. Emails failed repeatedly in early testing, achieving only 181 launches between failures against a design target of over 4,000. The weapons elevators didn't work reliably for years. A congressional watchdog flagged a poorly designed sewage system as early as 2020. And in March 2026, a fire that started in a laundry dryer vent spread so badly it took over 30 hours to fully contain, displacing more than 600 crew members from their bunks. The ship continued launching combat sorties throughout, but here is the perspective that matters. Every first-of-class carrier in American history has been a disaster on paper. The original USS Nimitz had propulsion problems and cost overruns. USS Forrestal suffered a catastrophic fire that killed 134 sailors. First ships always struggle. That's exactly why they're called first of class. The lessons they teach make every ship that follows better. The second Ford-class carrier, USS John F. Kennedy, is already incorporating every painful lesson the Ford learned. Looking forward, the Navy's build plan is ambitious. USS Enterprise CVN-80 is expected around 2030. USS Doris Miller CVN-81 follows as part of a dual buy contract saving approximately $4 billion in construction costs. 2 more Ford-class ships, CVN-82 and CVN-83, have already been announced. The goal is 10 Ford-class carriers fully replacing the Nimitz class on a one-for-one basis by the 2050s. The air wing of the future will include the F/A-XX, a sixth-generation fighter designed specifically for carrier operations with optional manned capability and deep integration with loyal wingman drones. The Ford's modular design and massive power surplus mean she's ready for all of it without any significant retrofitting. One final question. Should the Navy build more carriers or spread that investment across a larger number of smaller, more distributed ships? Drop your answer below. The USS Gerald R. Ford is not simply the most advanced aircraft carrier ever built. She is the most concentrated expression of American naval power in human history, engineered not just for today's threats, but designed to absorb the challenges of 2040 and beyond. Right now, as you watch this, she is somewhere at sea, Her sailors have been away from their families for most of a year. They have launched combat missions, fought fires, kept her running under conditions that would break lesser ships and lesser people. The 4,500 men and women aboard her are what transform $13 billion of engineering into something that genuinely changes the course of world events. Their skill, their professionalism, and their sacrifice deserve our deepest respect. If you found this deep dive valuable, hit that like button and subscribe for more military content. These videos take serious research and time to produce, and your support is what makes them possible. Stay proud, stay informed, and never forget the men and women keeping our seas safe.